Great stuff, James. Well, this week there was a dreadful story about the brutal murder in 2016 of a nurse, Gail Woodford, who was abducted, raped and murdered in the hellish-sounding township of Fregon in South Australia's remote Indigenous APY Lands. The murder was committed by a lifelong sex offender who had recently been released. Last week, the South Australian coroner brought down 12 recommendations to make life safer for remote nurses and provide better protection for people working and living in these outback Indigenous townships. There is so much that is tragic about this story, not least of which the descriptions of the lawlessness of these places. Joining us now is Deputy Mayor of Alice Springs, Jacinta Price. Jacinta, great to see you. How are you? I'm
good, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Jacinta, you've been warning about these the lawlessness of these APY. Tell us about what the APY lands are, first of all, and why they are so lawless.
The Arangu Pitjantjatjara lands sit for south of the Northern Territory border. Well, they include part of the Northern Territory as well as Western Australia and South Australia. And these are quite remote communities where there, in some cases, is quite little police presence in some of those communities. Things like tribal payback are still often carried out in some of these communities, and they experience some of the highest rates of family violence, domestic violence, sexual assault and that sort of thing. And, they are places that really do need extra support in terms of definitely police presence in some of those communities.
Rita.
You mentioned tribal payback and some of the traditional forms of punishment. Can you just give us a bit more insight into what that entails?
Well, sometimes if a crime has been committed where, some of these groups believe that payback is necessary to bring about peace or, appease the aggrieved, then someone will be targeted for a violent punishment, and that may be a spearing in the leg or a beating. In some cases, if that person isn't available that they want to provide payback to, then they will find the next person who is closely related to that person and inflict that punishment upon them. So, some of these things still occur nowadays. I have an aunt who offered herself up for punishment to be hit across the head by another woman. These things happen and they shouldn't be happening nowadays, but they do.
James.
Jacinta, I wanted to shift gears a little bit and talk about just some of the things we've seen in politics over the last couple of weeks, particularly around the treatment of women who have what might be called the wrong opinions for the sort of media elite types on the left. You have been somebody who has been very much attacked for your opinions in the public eye. What did you make of the way that people like Amanda Stoker and Jenny Morrison have all been copying it over the last fortnight because of their opinions?
Well, it's simple, isn't it? I mean, feminists don't want to empower women. They want to empower feminists. So, this attack is always ongoing. It's like, conservative women don't stack up in terms of, we don't deserve the same sort of respect or understanding or support as those of the left, where, we don't hammer stale, pale white males enough, clearly, for the left's liking. So we get targeted. I mean, on the other hand, I'm really pleased to see that Sharon Long, women like Sharon Long, Jacinta Gaya, who are Aboriginal women who are starting an Indigenous, a black conservative movement in Australia, if you like, are out there fighting back. They've had enough of the nonsense of the left. They've had enough of the nonsense that, the left are somehow the soldiers for women and black people, when it's completely and utterly the opposite. You're not respected unless you hold the same sorts of views and opinions as they do.
Rita.
I wanted to ask you about the coverage we've seen in the media in recent days about deaths in custody has been spoken about a great deal, and yet there's very little offered in the way of facts, and some of those facts go against the narrative that's being pushed by the bulk of the media. Can you please bring us the facts about Aboriginal deaths in custody and the rates compared to those who are non-Indigenous?
Well, you know, the findings from the Royal Commission already point out the fact that you're less likely to die in custody in comparison to non-Indigenous Australians if you're an Indigenous person in custody. Where the problem lies is the high rates of incarceration. And also, it also highlights the fact that there has been no systemic racism, which is what, you know, it was established. The Royal Commission was established on the assumption that there must be some sort of systemic racism going on for these deaths to be occurring, but that was completely ruled out. And yet the media continue to push this particular narrative. And, you know, as I've highlighted, the black-on-black crime and deaths that occur outside of custody far outstrip the number of deaths in custody. And for a lot of those people, of course, who have died in custody, the majority of those have died because of natural causes. So whether they were in custody or out of custody, they were going to pass away. It seems that, you know, these lives are only valued when, you know, if they've passed away within custody. And of course, I highlight the fact that over a 23-year similar period, that 756 Aboriginal people lost their lives and were killed by other Aboriginal people. This is, you know, the similar sort of time frame that, you know, we're looking at the Aboriginal deaths in custody issue. So again, Aboriginal people dying from homicide far outstrips those who are dying in custody, and of course homicide at the hands of our own. So if we wanted to stop high rates of incarceration, we would look at tackling the issue of family and domestic violence, and certainly homicide within our own communities.
Jacinta, just on a slightly lighter note, we had the nonsense of coon cheese being banned. The same character responsible for that has now found a new bit of publicity for himself. He's trying to get some football song banned because the original melody
Carlton.
Whatever it is, yeah. Tell us your thoughts, Jacinta.
Oh, I just sort of think, you know, don't some people have anything better to do than to go hunting for what could potentially be seen as racist when it's not racist at all. It's almost like, you know, the worst thing that can happen to a gambler is that they win. Because once they've got that win under their belt, they want to go and get more, right? Like, I'm concerned for this individual. You know, there's I think there was a meme that I've come across on Facebook, which I thought was marvellous, that you may not want to hear this, but oppression isn't hearing a word that offends you. Oppression is being told you can't say certain words because you'll offend someone else. I think we all need to start putting in our big girl and big boy pants and get on with the important things in life and harden up. Have a cup of concrete.
Well, no one does it better than you, Jacinta Price. Thanks so much for coming on Outsiders, and we'll speak to you soon. Thanks, Jacinta.
No worries. Thanks for having me.